He only wanted to touch the piano, just one curious moment, one brush of his hand against the keys. But in that instant, whispers turned to laughter, and laughter cut like a blade. To them, he was just another poor black boy who didn't belong near something so expensive, so untouchable. They mocked him, called him out, made sure he felt small. But what no one in that room expected was how quickly the story would turn. Because when his fingers finally pressed those keys, the entire room froze. And what happened after would change everything. But this was only the beginning because the real test was still to come. Elijah Brooks didn't stand out much. He lived on the west side of Baton Rouge in a cramped apartment where the walls were thin and dreams often felt thinner. His mom worked long hours, his brother drifted into the wrong crowd, but Elijah kept to himself. He wasn't the loudest kid in class or the one people rushed to sit next to. What made him different was something few ever noticed: his love for music. Most afternoons, while other kids hung out, Elijah walked to the recreation center down the street. There, on a dusty old keyboard with half the keys broken, he poured out every feeling he couldn't say out loud. He didn't need lessons or sheet music. His hands told stories all on their own. At school, most overlooked him. Some teased him. Only his music teacher, Miss Delacroix, seemed to notice there was something special in the way his fingers tapped on a desk or the way his eyes lit up when a melody played. She told him once, "You hear the world differently." And maybe he did. But Elijah had no idea how soon the world would hear him and how cruelly it would test him first. Marcus's jaw clenched. "No, just my stuff." The officer circled him like a predator. "Funny thing. A young man like you out here alone at night. People like you don't usually belong in quiet neighborhoods like this." Each word hit harder than the last. People like you. Marcus's heart pounded. He wanted to speak, to fight, to shout that this was his neighborhood, his right, his life. But fear sat heavy on his tongue. One wrong word could turn this from harassment into something much worse. The officer finally stepped back, but only to mutter into his radio. "Got a suspect here. Possible loitering. Maybe more. Need backup. Marcus's stomach dropped. Backup. For what? For walking home?" The silence of the street was suddenly replaced by the faint wail of sirens in the distance. Closer, louder. Each second was a hammer striking his chest. He looked around desperately. No neighbors had stepped outside. No cameras pointed this way. He was alone, cornered, and powerless under the weight of suspicion. "Hands where I can see them!" The officer barked again, though Marcus hadn't moved. His arms lifted slowly, heavy with dread. His bag lay spilled on the ground, his sandwich squashed under the officer's boot. The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights flickered against the walls of nearby houses. Another patrol car screeched to a halt, doors flying open. Two more officers stepped out, hands already resting on their holsters. Marcus's mouth went dry. 3 against 1. No one else to witness the truth. And then, something shifted. A door opened from across the street. A figure stepped out onto the porch, phone in hand, camera already recording. The first officer stiffened, his scowl deepening as he realized they were no longer alone. But was that enough? 1 camera against 3 uniforms? Marcus's heart raced as the officers exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. The tension was unbearable. One wrong move could turn everything into tragedy. And in that suspended moment, Marcus understood something chilling. This wasn't just about him walking home. This was about what he represented, about a world that saw his skin as threat before his words, his history, or his humanity. The sirens finally cut off, but the silence that followed was even louder. Marcus's fate hung in the balance. Would the truth be enough to protect him, or would this night spiral into something far worse? What happened next would expose more than a single confrontation. It would reveal the hidden weight of racism that no camera could ever fully capture. The red and blue lights washed over Marcus's face, painting him in a chaos of color. His arms trembled in the air, every muscle locked between fear and defiance. 3 officers now stood around him, their stares cold, their hands too close to their weapons. One of them barked, "Down on your knees!" Marcus's heart stopped. Kneel? On this street, his street, like a criminal? His legs shook, not from guilt, but from the sheer weight of humiliation pressing down on him. He glanced across the road. The neighbor's camera was still pointed at him, recording. A lifeline, maybe. But would a camera save him if the trigger was pulled first? "I didn't do anything," Marcus whispered. His voice barely carried, drowned by the pounding in his ears. The first officer stepped forward, pressing a hand against Marcus's chest and shoving him back. His bag spilled further into the street, the sandwich smeared into the dirt. "Stop resisting!" the officer shouted. Resisting? Marcus hadn't moved an inch. His mind spun. This was it, the script he had seen too many times before. Accusation, escalation, violence. One wrong breath could seal his fate. The other officers closed in, one reaching for cuffs. Marcus's chest heaved. His instinct screamed, "Run!" But where? Every path was blocked. His own neighborhood had become a trap. And then, it happened. The first officer's hand moved to his holster. His thumb flicked the strap loose. The unmistakable click rang out like a gunshot itself. Marcus's world narrowed to that single sound. Time slowed. He saw his mother's face flash in his mind, her smile from earlier that morning. He heard his father's voice warning him, "Survive first, son. Always survive." He thought of headlines he'd scrolled past, names turned hashtags, stories ended before they began. He didn't want to be another. "Please, don't shoot!" The words tore from his throat, raw and desperate. His arms stretched higher, his fingers splayed wide. "I'm not resisting." For a heartbeat, silence. The officer's hand lingered on the weapon, his eyes locked on Marcus's every move. The other 2 tensed, ready to pounce. The camera across the street caught it all. Neighbors began to murmur, doors creaking open, shadows gathering at windows. A crowd was forming. The weight of watching eyes shifted the air. The officers felt it too. Their aggression cracked under the gaze of witnesses. But for Marcus, the terror didn't fade. His life still dangled on the edge of a decision he couldn't control. And in that razor-thin moment between survival and tragedy, Marcus realized something chilling. This night wasn't just about him being stopped. It was about whether his existence, his right to walk home, would be respected or erased. The officer's hand hovered a second longer, then slowly eased away from the holster. The strap snapped back into place, but the damage was done. Marcus's knees buckled, his chest heaving, sweat soaking through his shirt. His dignity lay scattered across the pavement with his bag, crushed beneath the weight of suspicion. The crowd's whispers grew louder. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Cameras glowed in the dark like unblinking eyes, and Marcus stood frozen, caught between relief and rage. He was alive, but at what cost? Because when the hand left the holster, Marcus thought it was over. But what came next would prove the fight was only beginning. Marcus walked away from that street still breathing, but every step home felt heavier than the last. His sandwich was ruined, his dignity scattered across the concrete, and though his body was unharmed, his spirit carried bruises no one could see. He closed his door that night with shaking hands, staring into the silence of his own apartment. The world outside went on as if nothing had happened, but for Marcus, nothing would ever feel the same. The officers didn't apologize. They didn't stay to explain. They left him standing there with the weight of their suspicion pressed into his memory. And that's what stung the most. Not just the threat of violence, but the message behind it. That his skin was enough to make him dangerous, his presence enough to make him suspect. Marcus knew he wasn't the first to feel this, and he feared he wouldn't be the last. His story fit into a pattern far older than him, one written into the fabric of neighborhoods across America. A pattern where ordinary moments, walking home, grabbing food, listening to music, can turn deadly in a heartbeat if your skin is the wrong color. He tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he heard that click of the holster, saw that hand reaching for the gun. His survival felt like an accident, like a coin toss he had barely won. And the truth is, how many others never get that chance to walk away? How many names are never remembered beyond a headline, never spoken again except in grief or anger? Marcus's night ended in survival, but the larger story hasn't ended at all. It continues every day, in every city, in every uneasy glance, every unjust stop, every life taken too soon. His story is a reminder, not just of what nearly happened to him, but of what keeps happening to so many others. So the question remains, how many more Marcuses will it take before change comes? How many more must carry fear in their own neighborhoods, wondering if their next step outside might be their last? The world doesn't just need to hear these stories, it needs to act on them. Because until it does, survival will keep feeling like luck instead of a right. And maybe the better question to leave with tonight is this. When the next Marcus is out there walking home, will the world still look away, or will it finally stand beside him?